First of all, thank you for taking time to make this happen. Can you start us off by explaining what is Anna and what can Anna do?
That's a great question. Anna is the world's first artificially intelligent revenue cycle analyst for American healthcare systems. We built her with the end user in mind. So, typical BI platforms, great at what they do, providing a lot of power, being able to harness your data. But one of the things that's sort of lacking is that personal nature. And so we had the idea of establishing what's called a conversational user interface. Basically, big words for the ability to kind of just say what you want with some type of computer system, have it recognize what it is that you're saying, and then go off and find the answer to your question. So one side of Anna is that ability to sort of understand what it is that you want in a very natural, oriented sort of way. The other part of Anna is all of the sophistication that she has with her access to our business intelligence platform. So being able to ask questions about how you're doing with your denials, or winnowing down on a specific location or a specific denial owner group, understanding opportunity percentage scores, things like that. Anna can do it all on the denial side. On the transaction side, cash side, being able to ask questions about how you're doing with cash, how you've trended, and isolating where you may have hidden pockets of yield. So really what we did with Anna was truly try to come up with something that could automate some of the more rote tasks that the typical revenue cycle analyst does, so that way your team or the revenue cycle team at an organization can focus on the chunkier problems.
Great. So everyone's clear on the terminology here. Can you help us understand sort of the difference between an AI, machine learning, and then a conversational user interface? Just because I think there's a lot of confusion there. Can you set us straight?
Yeah, that's also a good question. I think, over the past few years, we've had this sort of explosion of the phrase artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of things that get kind of conflated at that point when you start using that word. And it also, in some ways, becomes a source of fear for some people, with that word. So conversational user interface is just that ability to naturally ask for what you want and then have the machine basically spit back some type of response. The classic case of that is a chatbot, which Anna is a conversational user interface or a chatbot. But it can kind of come in other ways too, anywhere where you can kind of do a natural language query where you just say, I'd like to see, how I've been trending with Black Cherry Medical Center for the past 6 months, for, the HB segment of my patient population. And then have some type of return result setbacks. That is a lesser form of a conversational user interface, but you're still interacting with the user interface in a conversational way. That's more of a search-based one, but the same kind of practical use case. Mm-hmm. Machine learning is a very broad category. Natural language processing, or the ability for a system to understand language, is a form of machine learning. Okay. Artificial intelligence uses machine learning technology, but it really represents a body, a corpus of different kinds of technologies that enable machines to learn from the data that it's been given and over time produce better results for the thing that it's been trained to do. But at the end of the day, machine learning is really geared toward data in, refined a set of algorithms that you've already given it for it to be able to perform its given task, and then see some type of output that gets better with time. Okay. Artificial intelligence is really sort of the next level of machine learning, taking all of these various machine learning technologies and weaving them together in a way, if you want to think of it this way, weaving them together in a way that allows a system to become more than just a command line input. Being able to take a task, take a question that you have, be able to answer it, then provide some series of recommendations that are context specific, not only just to this question that you asked, but the series of questions that you asked to get up to this point. And be able to, daisy chain, all of that context, all of those different states together. The endpoint of artificial intelligence, right, is what we see in the movies, right? You have the robots running around, acting human, being like humans, for all intents and purposes, alive, self-aware, right? And we're not there yet. We're not close to being there yet. You can't fully replace a human. Even on a revenue cycle team, you're still going to need humans solving hard problems.
Sure.
Artificial intelligence is used though in a continuum of different meanings, meaning everything from kind of like how it actually works today from a technology perspective, which is how I described it, all the way to what you see in those sci-fi movies. But unfortunately, with it being such a broad definitional range, even though purists would probably say it's probably only this, and they would have another term, for this form of it.
Yeah.
But because kind of in society, sort of, in the zeitgeist, if you will, all of those different kinds of notions have been kind of conflated together,
Right. Yeah.
which is fine. People need to use words to, kind of collect around some, normalized knowledge of what it is that, they're trying to understand. But it can lead to some of those, fears.
Sure. So within the spectrum that people in the popular zeitgeist are referring to as AI, Anna sits in there somewhere, yeah?
Yep, that's exactly right. And so Anna's more of like where, she's on the cutting edge of this, wave of technology in progress toward building out artificial intelligence. But she's, we're still in this epoch, if you will, of this era of trying to, build better and better artificial intelligence. So she's definitely more on this spectrum. But the hope is, with time that, and with all the other kinds of, machine learning tools and artificially intelligent applications that are coming to fore now, that we all slowly kind of move in that direction.
Great. I'm curious, sort of beyond Anna, into like the full spectrum of offerings that are on that spectrum, what today is out there that you're excited about?
Wow, that's a great question. There's so much. I feel like almost every day I'm getting a news alert from, Tech Meme or, some other Hacker Noon, one of those, websites out there that are kind of like geared toward the tech community saying, or Product Hunt, for example, of different cool, nifty new things that, are being done. Google just released their healthcare API, at the HIMSS conference just a few months ago. We've been hearing about, large valuations for just simple chatbots like Wobot, a chatbot that's designed to be kind of your bedside therapist. If you have problems that you want to talk to somebody about, but maybe you're too nervous about talking to an actual human being. But still be inculcated or imbued with best practices, with mental therapy best practices. So I think specifically, like if I had to kind of winnow it down, right, because I have a broad range of interests, space exploration, the tech guy, whatever.
Sure.
Right, sure. But in the healthcare space, I think that there's some really cool things, obviously be done in the analytics space, champion of Anna, obviously.
Yeah.
But, with that example of Wobot, being able to, have people interact with machines, knowing that they're interacting with machines, but still deriving value from that relationship, I think is fascinating. It's fascinating not only from a technology perspective, but also from a society perspective.
Yeah.
What does that all mean? This is the stuff of Space Odyssey 2001, right?
Yeah.
I think also on the healthcare side, robotic process automation is super interesting. A lot of people are fearful that it may lead to job loss and things like that, but we've been through these different eras in economic change before. There's always been a little bit of, a few years worth of transition, especially when there's a big bang approach, like, Ford Motor Company coming out with the assembly line and so forth.
Right.
But it stabilizes and new niches are born. And ultimately, the things that people don't really want to spend a lot of time doing kind of goes by the wayside. And the bigger problems that they can actually focus on, turns out those bigger problems are actually bigger than they originally anticipated.
Sure.
And more multifaceted and require even more people to solve them.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of those kinds of problems in healthcare where we just simply don't have enough resources to spend time on working on those hard problems. So I think from a technology perspective, I'm excited to see all of these different avenues being pursued. I think for me, the big themes that I'd like to continue to see growth in are one, personalization of applications to the individual user and the individual user experience. Applications like Wobot.
Right.
On the other side is data integration, interoperability. Big theme at HIMSS this past year, and it will continue to be. No amount of machine learning is going to solve, in my opinion, those kinds of problems. You need humans working together to figure out how we're going to get these legacy systems that are 40 years old to communicate with systems that are 5 years old, 1 year old, et cetera. And that's critical to our forward progress.
Do you have, as AIs become more available, more prevalent, do you have any thoughts or cautions, maybe suggestions for regulations even, that you think could be put in place to make sure that we have the right protections from some of the things that we've been concerned about?
Sure, smarter minds have tried than me have tried to tackle that question. You know, there's that ongoing feud that you see between, you know, someone like Elon Musk and, you know, Google's Eric Schmidt, you know, and so forth, right? So, you know, these heavy, you know, tech titans kind of duking it out intellectually, albeit on Twitter, which is hilarious in some ways. But, you know, I think that as with any kind of new technology, there is a period of experimentation, and then in time there are downsides that ultimately arise. I think we've seen that with self-driving cars, you know, and some of the PR issues that Uber's been facing, you know, with what they've had going on in Arizona. But ultimately, you know, it's kind of hard to halt the train of forward progress and innovation. And so from a regulation perspective, yes, I mean, regulations will come. Regulations in the purest form, right, are meant to do some type of societal good. But, you know, as with any kind of exercise in, you know, civic duty, humans get in the mix, and that becomes a lot more complicated. So do I personally have any recommendations for a given regulation? You know, I think the jury for me is still out. Other than I will say that, yes, it's a good idea. What form that takes, though, it's a little bit tougher to come by.
Okay, well, the last question I have, actually I have two final questions here. The first of the two is, you really have been learning about, investigating, following the articles, all the feeds. I mean, you're practically a walking RSS for what's happening in the AI and chatbot space. And people who are outside of it, they don't have that access. And when you don't have access, that's the place where fears can arise, right? Like, you get concerns about what's happening, what's developing, am I going to have my job, whatever. Having seen so much, are there things, directions of development that actually concern you, or are we pretty much in an okay space right now?
So that's a fair question. I think the answer is sure, there are things that concern me. You know, when you do have the loss of human life as a result of a self-driving vehicle that is operating on some type of artificially intelligent platform, that's a problem. One way or the other, it's a problem. Now, is it a bug in the code? Yeah, I mean, obviously. But, you know, at some point, you know, especially in the software world, you know, development code is never done. It's this evolving thing. So at what point is, you know, a self-driving platform good enough, right, to be production ready and mass marketable? So yeah, I definitely have fears, and I have fears from two perspectives. One is people getting hurt, you know, and I don't want that to happen. I think the second is what that would do, and that is in a priority order. The second is, what does that do to the adoption of technology? What does that do to our ability to move forward? What does that do to innovation? You know, and going back to your regulation question, if we implement the wrong regulations and we clamp down on innovation, then that begins to make us, at least, you know, as you know, part of the modern economy, less competitive at the end of the day. And that stings and that hurts. And those are the kinds of things that ultimately lead to job loss over time. Much longer cycle, a lot harder to see the forest through the trees on in those types of situations, but it can happen. So yeah, there are definitely fears that I have. I think, you know, the news speaks for itself there. But it's twofold, right? What does it do? Who are the people that have to suffer, you know, during this period of experimentation? And then the second piece is, how do we get through it? And what do we do about it?
Great. last question then, for your own work life, personal life, whatever, what is the thing you're hoping comes soon in the space of AI and chatbots, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, so many different things. And every answer that I want to provide probably sounds ridiculous and extremely, fantasy land.
Sure.
So.
Do you want Jarvis? Is that what you
Yeah,
want?
pretty much, yeah. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes me Tony Stark or not. I'm going to go with probably not, but for a number of different reasons. But yeah, I think for me, seeing progress like with what Google recently showed at their I/O conference with a bot that can just handle menial tasks for you, like scheduling a hair appointment.
Yeah.
I mean, that really gets me going, right? Because if I could have another me doing things that I need done, and just totally trust it to do exactly what I need done for like the little things, not the big things, but scheduling a hair appointment, knowing that it's been a couple weeks since my last hair appointment and that I should have a recurring appointment set up, it looking at my calendar and kind of figuring that out, knowing that I probably want to go at 11 o'clock versus 11:30, because I want to time it with my typical gym routine or gym class that I like to go to at 9:15 on Saturdays, being able to figure out those kinds of things. So data interoperability, right? And the ability to kind of make heuristic judgments based on sort of my behaviors, right? And produce a kind of outcome, but not just for hair appointments, but for all the different things in my life would be fantastic.
And AI paying attention to my behaviors and then booking travel would cause me a lot of problems because my behaviors are already so bad.
Right, but this is exactly my point. If you actually had a bot that was intelligent enough to know a person's quirks and know that, they didn't mean to sit in 8D, they meant to sit in 8A, and that maybe you might actually spring the extra $20 for a flight to get that window seat. I mean, those are the kinds of things that get me excited about a bot. When I said earlier the things that I was super interested in, it's the personalization and the user experience for the individual end user and data interoperability. You solve those two problems, I mean, man, you have one of the coolest apps for whatever it is that it's supposed to do. And selfishly, it's what I want for Anna, right? But you solve those two problems and boom, you have a winning application. You have a game changer.
Great. Well, thank you for all that and your time. I'm looking forward to everything you're coming up with for Anna this year and in the years to come. Appreciate you having a chat.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.